They say war is hell. But they never mention it could start over something as invisible as a Wi-Fi signal. I'm not talking about dropped Zoom calls or buffering Netflix shows. I mean full-scale, passive-aggressive, HOA-sanctioned sabotage. And the general leading the opposing side? Karen Spencer, president of our neighborhood HOA, self-proclaimed guardian of community standards, and, as I've come to learn, a woman willing to cross any line to maintain her reign. I've lived in Sycamore Ridge for 7 years. It's a pleasant place if you like matching shutters and precisely trimmed boxwoods. Our street looks like something out of a realtor's dream brochure, until you meet the people in charge. Specifically, Karen. She has the uncanny ability to show up within minutes of any perceived infraction. Trash bin not rolled in by 6 p.m.? Karen's already got photos. Lawn edging half an inch over regulation? Expect a warning slip. And heaven help you if your kid's bike touches the sidewalk, that's a public hazard in Karen's world. But up until recently, she left my family mostly alone. I think it's because I'm boring. I work remote IT support, my wife teaches 3rd grade, and our teenage son, Dylan, is a quiet kid with a love for computers and an allergy to drama. That all changed 3 weeks ago. It started with a knock at the door on a Sunday morning. I was in the middle of brewing coffee when I saw Karen through the peephole, pastel cardigan, clipboard in hand, and the kind of smile that's less friendly and more I've already made up my mind. Mr. Lyman, she began, we've had several reports of interference in the neighborhood's wireless systems. I blinked. Come again? Interference, she repeated, as if saying it slower would help me understand. People have been experiencing buffering, dropped calls, device glitches. I've consulted with a few experts. It's very likely someone's using unregulated equipment that's disrupting our frequency range. And you think that someone is me? She didn't answer. Just raised her eyebrows. I wanted to laugh. I didn't, because I knew better. Instead, I said, I assure you, all our equipment is legal. Just your standard router and modem. Karen nodded like she wasn't listening. Well, until we get to the bottom of it, the HOA is asking you to temporarily disable your home Wi-Fi. For 48 hours. As a courtesy. My brain stalled. You want me to turn off my Wi-Fi? I asked slowly, making sure I'd heard her right. It's for the good of the neighborhood, she said, as if that explained everything. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I simply told her no, politely but firmly, and then watched her walk away with that same saccharine smile. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, my router was fried. I mean, completely fried. Black screen, no power, lights dead. I'm no amateur, I checked the power supply, tried another outlet, even swapped in a spare modem. Nothing. Dylan came downstairs, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and took one look at the damage. She did this, he muttered. I know she did. I wanted to say he was overreacting. I wanted to believe Karen wouldn't stoop that low. But something told me this wasn't a coincidence. Dylan disappeared into his room for most of the day after that. I assumed he was just frustrated. I didn't realize he was already planning his response. By the end of the week, things escalated. Karen began walking past our house more frequently. She'd slow down, glance at the roofline, sometimes stop and stare at the side of the house like she was waiting to catch us in the act of, what? Illegal bandwidth? Then, 2 nights later, our new modem, the one I'd bought and installed with a password so complicated even I had to write it down, went dark again. This time, the power strip had been physically unplugged from the wall behind the entertainment center. No one in our house had done it. There were fresh scratches on the window screen near the living room. Subtle. But there. That's when Dylan made his announcement. I'm going to fix it, he said, standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Fix what? I asked. Her. I nearly choked on my soda. What do you mean, fix her? He held up his phone and smirked. I'm going to make her think she's being haunted by Wi-Fi. I should have stopped him. Really, I should have. But there was something in Dylan's voice that made me pause, a spark I hadn't seen in a while. He was 16, quiet, brilliant, and had the social skills of a toaster. But when it came to computers, the kid was a magician. What do you mean, haunt her? I asked, half joking. Dylan didn't smile. He tapped his phone, turned the screen toward me, and showed a satellite map of the neighborhood. This is her house, he said, zooming in on 1843, Thornberry Lane. I've mapped the signal range of her Wi-Fi. See here? He highlighted a faint circle overlapping her backyard and part of the street. Okay, I said, intrigued despite myself. What exactly are you planning to do? He grinned. Introduce her to a digital poltergeist. What followed was a week-long operation that could only be described as a teenage cyberpunk thriller, except instead of a megacorporation or government conspiracy, the target was a middle-aged HOA president with a superiority complex. Step 1 was surveillance. Dylan spent the next 2 days watching Karen's house from the treehouse in our backyard, binoculars in one hand, laptop in the other. He cataloged the times she was home, when she left, when she took her poodle on a walk, and what devices lit up her Wi-Fi network. Her setup was surprisingly modern, a mesh router system, smart thermostat, Alexa, Ring doorbell, even automated garden lights. She's got everything connected, he muttered. It's like she's begging for a digital haunting. He also discovered something else. Her network name, HOA Queen 1843. No password. Not even WEP. It's open? I asked, stunned. Dylan just shook his head. She's running a guest network. Probably so her committee members can log on for emergency meetings or something. By Thursday night, he had everything he needed. He built what he called the Ghost Node. It was a Raspberry Pi disguised as a garden gnome, complete with chipped paint and a little crack in the hat for ventilation. It was solar-powered, equipped with a range extender, and programmed to detect her devices and mimic a variety of Wi-Fi-related issues. We're not breaking anything, he reminded me. We're just confusing her router. I knew I should be more concerned. But after 2 weeks of dealing with Karen's harassment, the idea of her own smart home turning against her felt poetic. Friday morning, Dylan waited until Karen took her usual power walk at 6:15 a.m., her arms swinging like she was conducting a symphony. He crept across the lawn, slipped the gnome under a hedge near her fence, and retreated like a Navy SEAL. By 7 a.m., the haunting began. Her Alexa randomly whispered, "I'm always listening," in the middle of her morning playlist. Her smart thermostat set itself to 62 degrees during a 95-degree heat wave. Her porch light flickered Morse code. At 9:42 a.m., the Ring camera caught her standing on her porch yelling at it like it was a sentient intruder. By noon, she posted on the neighborhood forum. Is anyone else experiencing strange smart home malfunctions? I suspect someone is trying to hack our network. Possibly the Lyman house. Stay alert. Dylan didn't even try to hide his smile. Now she's blaming us for exactly what she did. That's called karma. The real fun started Saturday evening. Dylan activated Phase 2, the Wi-Fi Phantom. The Ghost Node began cloning her network signal and randomly renaming it to things like the HOA is watching, Karen's Paranoia Portal, Poodle Cam Online, Disconnect Me Please. Neighbors began noticing. Screenshots flooded the community app. Karen posted again. Urgent, someone is hijacking our community Wi-Fi. I suspect this is domestic terrorism. I am contacting the authorities. That night, our doorbell rang. It was Officer Janowitz, the same one who'd once been called because someone's lawn flamingo was too flamboyant. Hi, folks, he said with a tired sigh. We've got a report of cyber harassment coming from this address. I didn't even flinch. Dylan had prepared everything. We invited him in, showed our network logs, our router's activity timestamps, and proof we hadn't accessed any other IP addresses but our own. Janowitz nodded. Honestly, between you and me, We get these calls from Mrs. Spencer at least once a month. Last time it was because her cat feeder was possessed. This is just new material. But Karen wasn't done. By Monday morning, her network was down. Permanently. Dylan hadn't touched it, she had reset everything so many times that she corrupted her own system. She stomped down the street to our house, red in the face, fists clenched. "This is war," she hissed through the screen door. Dylan looked up from his laptop and said, "You started it." And then he pressed a button. Her smart sprinkler system, which had mysteriously been looping thanks to a firmware bug Dylan quietly pointed out to tech support, turned on mid-sentence, spraying her from all sides. She screamed. Loud. Then slipped on the wet grass. The moment the garage camera caught her flailing with her soaked clipboard was the moment Dylan declared victory. If getting sprayed by her own sprinkler system was a defeat, Karen didn't show it. She retreated to her house like a soaked general retreating from a failed skirmish, clipboard still clutched in her hand, water dripping from her cardigan. By the next day, retaliation was in full swing. We received 3 formal HOA notices in our mailbox. Improper landscaping maintenance, because apparently the topiary in our front yard lacked communal harmony. Excessive noise from electronics, citing suspicious device humming sounds after 9 p.m. Unauthorized antenna installation, accusing us of placing surveillance tech near the property line, Dylan's gnome. Dylan read each letter aloud like he was narrating a sitcom. Wow. She's gone full Bond villain. She's escalating, I said, rubbing my temples. She's panicking, Dylan corrected. Karen wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to erase the memory of defeat. And like all bad leaders with too much power and too little oversight, she turned to her board, the HOA's version of the Justice League, minus the justice. Tuesday evening, the neighborhood forum exploded. Karen had scheduled an emergency meeting for all residents to address cyber threats originating from within the community. I nearly laughed out loud. "Let's go," Dylan said. "To the meeting?" I asked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "Let's give her the stage she wants." So we went. Not to confront. Just to watch. The meeting was held at the community clubhouse, the same space Karen had once used to ban inflatable holiday decorations longer than 6 feet. We arrived to find about 30 neighbors seated, murmuring among themselves. Karen stood at the front, dressed in all black, which I assumed was her version of tactical gear, and holding a presentation remote like it was a laser pointer of doom. "Neighbors," she began, her voice shaky but firm, "we are under attack." Murmurs rose. Karen clicked a slide. A blurry screenshot of a Wi-Fi network appeared. "HOA is watching. This," she said dramatically, "is not a joke. This is psychological warfare. These names are being broadcast from a home in our community. They are vulgar. Threatening. And they are designed to destabilize our peaceful lives." Next slide. A Ring camera screenshot of her slipping in the sprinkler zone. "This is what they did to me." Someone near the back snorted. A few people chuckled. Karen spun. "This is serious. My smart home has been compromised. My Alexa now whispers when no one's speaking. My lawn lights blink in Morse code. Someone is weaponizing Wi-Fi." At that point, Dylan leaned over to me and whispered, "She thinks Morse code is a weapon?" "She thinks unregulated humming is a violation," I whispered back. Karen then announced her solution, a new HOA resolution that would allow board-approved inspections of any smart tech within the neighborhood. A man in the third row raised his hand. "You want to enter people's homes?" "Only if necessary," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Another neighbor stood up. "You're telling us this all started after your Wi-Fi went haywire? And now you want the right to search our routers?" Karen's expression tightened. "You don't understand how dangerous this is." But she was losing the room. Dylan stood up. "Calm. Clear." And then, very politely, he said, Has anyone considered that maybe all this started because someone messed with someone else's equipment first? Dead silence. Karen turned red. I'm not naming names, Dylan continued. But if someone had, say, interfered with a neighbor's Wi-Fi, caused damage, or entered a property uninvited, that would be illegal. And maybe, just maybe, this is what happens when you poke a sleeping server. The room burst into laughter. Even the HOA treasurer, who had once fined us for an unpainted fence post, was grinning. Karen banged the gavel, which, to be clear, she had brought herself, and declared the meeting adjourned. But the damage was done. That night, Dylan and I sat on the porch, sipping lemonade, watching as the neighborhood message board lit up with memes, all featuring Karen's sprinkler mishap, re-edited with captions like HOA versus Wi-Fi, the final upload. Ready for phase 3? Dylan asked. I turned to him. What's phase 3? He smiled. We take away her signal. Completely. You're talking about a blackout? He nodded. Not just a blackout. A digital Bermuda Triangle. Dylan called it Operation Blackout, and when I asked what that meant, he just smiled and said, we're going to unplug the Queen, wirelessly. It sounded theatrical. But in truth, it was genius. Karen had become dependent on her smart devices like most people rely on coffee. She used her phone to control her lights, locks, thermostat, lawn irrigation, dog feeder, and, as we'd learned, even her blinds. Dylan's plan wasn't to break anything or hack anything illegal. He was simply going to confuse every system in her house into thinking it lived in a different country, without power. He started by fine-tuning the GNOME, our solar-powered Raspberry Pi network scrambler, into something a little more playful. Now, instead of cloning her Wi-Fi once or twice, it ran 5 networks at staggered intervals. HOA_rules_you. This_ISNT_Karen's_network. Disconnect_N_repent. The router is watching. 404 Karen not found. Each one broadcasted from slightly different spoofed MAC addresses, making it look like half the neighborhood had gone rogue. Then, every 15 minutes, it'd switch channels, just enough to make her smart system drop out, reconnect, and reset. We waited. And watched. At first, Karen didn't seem to notice. But by noon, her Ring camera stopped working. By 3 p.m., the front lights began to flicker on and off like she lived in a haunted house. And around 6 p.m., the real fun began. Her garage door refused to open. We watched from across the street as she stood there in her driveway, repeatedly jabbing her app and yelling at her phone. The garage made a slow, grinding sound, then stopped halfway. The porch lights flashed Morse code again. Her poodle barked from inside like it had joined a revolution. Then came the piece de resistance. Dylan had timed everything so that Karen's smart speaker, a sleek tower she always bragged about during HOA bake sales, would begin playing audio when the Wi-Fi glitched. Nothing threatening. Just confusing. From the speaker, loud enough to be heard from the porch, came a computerized voice. Hello, Karen. This is your network. We need to talk. She screamed. Legitimately screamed. And that was just night 1. Night 2 was more dramatic. Karen stormed into the HOA board chat, screenshot courtesy of Dylan's network monitoring app, and declared that someone was targeting her with cyber witchcraft. She demanded an emergency digital security committee be formed. No one replied. Instead, the neighborhood forum flooded with jokes. Someone changed their Wi-Fi to Karen stole my cookies. Another posted a poll, do you trust your smart fridge? Yes/no/ask Karen. But Dylan wasn't done. Using a trick he'd learned from a white hat security forum, he configured the ghost node to emit a series of phantom Bluetooth requests. Just signal pings, not intrusions, that targeted smart assistants and speakers. Whenever Karen's system detected one, it assumed a new device was trying to connect. By the end of day 3, her Alexa had announced. New device detected, Paranoia Cloud. Please approve or deny access. Karen screamed loud enough we heard it from our porch. She unplugged every device in the house, or tried to. Dylan intercepted the signals and replaced them with fake status reports. At 11:23 p.m., Karen updated the HOA message board. "They're inside my house. My Wi-Fi is cursed. I don't know who you are, but this is your final warning. I will find you." That's when Dylan, using his best judgment, initiated the final touch. He reconfigured the ghost node to send a series of error messages to every open device nearby. Her thermostat blinked and displayed, "Temperature, unknown. Please ask Karen." Her fridge, a fancy model with a touch screen, scrolled the words, "Karen. Control is an illusion." And the best part, her speaker played, softly, almost comfortingly. "You started this, Karen. Now, please reset your soul." By morning, her house was dark. Neighbors reported she'd turned off her main breaker, disconnected every smart appliance, posted a handwritten sign on her lawn. "Private property, surveillance removed, no tech zone." Dylan looked up from his laptop. "We win?" I nodded. "We win. But the thing about tyrants is, they don't surrender quietly." And as we'd find out in part 5, Karen wasn't done. She had one more trick. A final move that would put our entire family on the line, and force Dylan to make a choice that would turn the whole neighborhood upside down. Stay tuned. The end is near. For 3 blissful days, our neighborhood returned to peace. Karen's house was dark, quiet, and entirely unplugged. No porch light flickers, no Alexa voices. Just silence. Most people thought she'd finally cracked and retreated into analog exile. But not Dylan. "She's planning something," he said one evening, staring at the code on his laptop like it might whisper her secrets. "She's too proud to let this end without a bang." He was right. The bang came on a Monday. Literally. At 6:03 a.m., 2 city utility trucks pulled up outside our house. 5 workers in orange vests began poking around our property with signal scanners and trench mapping gear. One of them knocked on the door, clipboard in hand. "Morning. We're here to investigate an unregistered signal amplifier operating on unauthorized bandwidth, interfering with city infrastructure." "What?" I blinked. He handed me a form. Complaint was filed anonymously. But the evidence points here. You're broadcasting a signal that's overlapping emergency responder frequencies. I froze. That wasn't just petty. That was dangerous. Behind me, Dylan stepped into view, still in pajama pants, holding his tablet. "That's a lie," he said. "We're operating inside legal home network limits. Nothing outside 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. We even run throttling protocols." The tech stared at him. "Kid, unless you can prove it, we might need to confiscate your equipment." "Let me show you," Dylan said, already walking toward the garage. Over the next 20 minutes, he walked those techs through every line of code, every config file, every frequency log. It wasn't just defensive, it was surgical. By the end, one of the utility guys laughed. "Honestly, I wish more people had setups this clean. Karen Spencer called this in, didn't she?" "She did," I said. He shook his head. "She's been filing complaints all over town. This is the 4th one we've dismissed this week. Last time it was a neighbor's holiday lights causing retinal trauma. You're good." They packed up and left. But now, it was personal. That night, Dylan looked at me with a calm intensity one hadn't seen since the day Karen first knocked on our door. "I'm going to end this," he said. "Not prank her. Not confuse her. I'm going to expose her." He spent the next 3 days in his room. Barely came down for meals. I'd hear snippets, the clack of keys, the quiet whir of a printer, and occasionally, "Holy crap," followed by hurried typing. When he finally emerged, he held a manila envelope thick with documents and a flash drive labeled Karengate. "This is everything," he said. "Logs, timestamps, neighborhood forums, fake complaint filings, video evidence. She didn't just target us. She's been controlling the HOA like it's her private kingdom. We didn't go to the HOA board. We went to the town hall. Friday morning, Dylan and I walked into the community liaison's office and asked for a meeting. We laid out everything, including evidence of Karen's illegal use of HOA funds to purchase smart devices for herself, security cameras she claimed were for the neighborhood but only pointed at her own driveway, and, most damning, the use of her husband's city employee credentials to file false utility complaints. The town liaison stared at the stack of proof like it was radioactive. "Give us a few days," she said. "This is big." The fallout was nuclear. On Monday, a special HOA audit was announced. On Wednesday, Karen was removed from her position by unanimous board vote. By Friday, she had a for sale sign in her yard. The day the moving trucks pulled up, Dylan and I sat on the porch with lemonade again, just like before. Karen walked out, tight-lipped, sunglasses on, avoiding eye contact. But she paused at the end of her driveway. Turned. "I hope you're proud," she said, voice hollow. "You humiliated me." Dylan stood up, walked to the fence, and said, "You tried to control people. To silence them. You destroyed your own network, Karen. Not me." She looked at him for a long moment. Then got into her car and drove away. It's been 3 months since then. The neighborhood is quieter now. The HOA has a new president, a retired librarian named Miss Connie who believes in community gardens and potlucks. Dylan was offered an internship with the town's tech department. He declined. Said he was working on something better. When I asked what, he just smiled. "Let's just say if anyone ever tries to mess with us again, they'll find out what a real firewall looks like." And then he renamed our Wi-Fi network. Queen was checkmated. Welcome to the new era. The Wi-Fi works just fine.